For as long as David could remember, he had heard his mother criticize others for being bold, in the store for having the nerve to grab the last loaf, on the bus for having the nerve to take the only empty seat, at the clinic for having the nerve to take the only empty seat, or at the pharmacy for having the nerve to buy the most expensive medicine. She often said that courage was a second happiness, but she was not. Her constant complaints painted a picture of a woman who felt surrounded by inconsiderate people, yet firmly considered herself above such behavior. Now, after many years, David finally saw the truth. His wife, Emma, once observed that those who shout the loudest are often guilty of the same faults themselves. Emma said to David, "I'm sorry, but your mom is bold to the point of rudeness." This remark hurt David more than he expected. He shrugged and replied that there was probably some truth to it, although he didn't want to admit it for a long time. Reflecting on his childhood, he realized that much of his mother's behavior matched the very traits she had condemned. Eleanor, his mother, was always trying to snatch up everything she could, but he had never noticed this behavior in himself. She considered herself a caring mother of a large family. For her, raising 2 children was already an overwhelming task, especially since her husband, Robert, was, in her opinion, too weak to succeed in life. Eleanor believed that she had to achieve everything on her own, even taking food from the cafe where she worked as a cook. She proudly proclaimed that she had taught her children to be self-reliant early on, teaching them to fend for themselves. She boasted that they had become good because of her strict upbringing. Eleanor believed that her sacrifices justified her actions and rarely recognized how her attitude affected those around her. Her daughter, Chloe, married and moved with her husband to the countryside. David, on the other hand, stayed in the city and married Emma a few years later. Eleanor immediately told David that she had done her part. She had fed, clothed, and educated him. Now that he was an adult, he was on his own and had to provide for his family. David took her words to heart and never asked his parents for anything. He and Emma worked hard, saved money, and dreamed of having their own home, despite the difficulties of living with noisy neighbors. They often recalled those moments when they had scraped together every penny, supporting each other in times of need. Eventually, Emma inherited a small 1-bedroom apartment from her grandmother. This inheritance allowed them to move out and, after a few years, buy a 4-room apartment. Although it needed major renovations, they were excited to have a place of their own. The excitement of envisioning their future in this new home helped them endure long days of hard work. They had been saving money and working on the apartment for years without any help from Eleanor. Emma's parents wanted to help but couldn't because of her father's illness. Despite this, they gave moral support and tried to participate as much as they could. When Eleanor heard about their new apartment, she immediately suggested a housewarming party. David didn't see the need for it, noting that these days guests often come empty-handed, even on birthdays. Eleanor insisted, however, and they reluctantly invited a small group of friends. Emma's parents were unable to attend as they were at a rehabilitation center for her father's recovery. Only Eleanor, Chloe, and a few others attended the party. Chloe came alone as her husband was busy at work. Eleanor dominated the event, picking up food to take home and treating the event as an obligation rather than a celebration. Emma's frustration grew, but she kept her composure, reminding herself that Eleanor's behavior was nothing new. Chloe, who had always assured David that she was happy in the village, began to complain to Eleanor about the harsh living conditions. In response, Eleanor began pressuring David and Emma to let Chloe move into their old 1-bedroom apartment. Emma adamantly refused, pointing out that Chloe's problems with her husband and the house were her own to deal with. This led to an argument, during which Eleanor accused Emma of lacking empathy. David found himself in the middle of it, trying to mediate and acquiescing to his wife. A few weeks later, David and Emma discovered that someone had moved into their old apartment without their knowledge. Upon investigating, they discovered that Chloe was living there, claiming that Eleanor had given her permission and keys to the apartment. Shocked, they confronted Chloe, who refused to leave. Emma and David called Chloe's husband and learned that Chloe had lied to him, saying she was taking care of her sick mother in the city. Her husband, who had been sending money to Eleanor, was outraged to learn the truth and filed for divorce. This revelation unraveled the web of deceit that Eleanor had woven to satisfy Chloe's whims. Chloe's scheme unraveled, and she was forced to leave the apartment. She moved in with her parents, who were discouraged by her behavior. Eleanor, on the other hand, continued to believe that everyone around her was to blame, refusing to recognize her own actions. She doubled down on her image as a selfless matriarch, oblivious to the chaos she had caused. Reflecting on what had happened, David couldn't help but see the irony in the fact that his mother constantly criticized others for being bold and selfish. Eleanor had been blind to the log in her own eye all along. Yet despite everything, David couldn't completely detach himself from the woman who had shaped his childhood. He hoped that one day she would see the truth, though he knew it was best not to count on it. In the meantime, he and Emma had decided to build their lives free from Eleanor's manipulative influence, treasuring their hard-earned independence and the lessons they'd learned along the way.